All right, let's jump right into what is honestly one of the most fascinating intellectual showdowns in ancient history. Today's explainer dives deep into the Payasi Sutta. It's this remarkable text from ancient Buddhist literature that tackles one of the greatest mysteries of human existence, and it does it through a high-stakes debate. This is essentially a masterclass in logic and philosophy. We're going to explore what happens when an ancient, hardcore skeptic who demands solid physical evidence for the afterlife goes head-to-head with a scholar armed with some seriously profound reasoning. So, if the afterlife actually exists, why hasn't anyone come back to tell us about it? That is the ultimate question kicking off our explainer today. It puts us squarely in the mindset of this ancient skeptic, and honestly, it's a completely rational question, right? If there really are realms beyond this one, where is the verifiable proof? Why is the sky so silent? This one provocative question sets the stage for a clash of worldviews that is literally just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. To unpack all this, we need to meet our two debaters. First up, we have Prince Payasi. He is a strict materialist ruler who believes absolutely only in what he can see, touch, and measure. He's even conducted some pretty gruesome physical experiments trying to locate the soul, and he is completely unconvinced by any religious claims. On the other side, we have the Venerable Kumara Kassapa, a brilliant scholar and monk. Now, Kassapa doesn't just sit back and demand blind faith. Instead, he uses step-by-step Socratic reasoning and some incredibly vivid analogies to completely dismantle the prince's materialist worldview. Section 1. Why does no one return? Prince Payasi thinks he has the ultimate trump card here, and his logic is actually pretty relatable. He argues that his friends would for sure send a message if they somehow survived death. He basically tells Kassapa, "Look, I've made pacts with my friends. I told them, if you end up in some terrible place for your bad deeds, come back and warn me. And if you end up in paradise, come back and tell me it's real." But as Payasi points out, no one has ever returned to report back. For him, this total lack of messengers is airtight proof that the afterlife is a myth. Kassapa comes right back at him, arguing that the rules of the afterlife just don't care about Payasi's demands. He asks the prince to picture a doomed criminal who's just been sentenced to death. If that thief begs the royal executioner for a quick weekend pass to go home and warn his family not to commit crimes, would the executioner actually let him go? Of course not. Kassapa explains that in that exact same way, the wardens of the underworld are not in the business of handing out weekend passes just so the wicked can deliver messages to their buddies. Okay, but what about the good friends who went to heaven? To explain why they don't drop by, Kassapa uses this brilliant analogy of a man rescued from a cesspool. Imagine a guy pulled out of deep, foul mud. He is scraped completely clean, scrubbed down, oiled, and then dressed in incredibly fine clothes and placed on a gorgeous palace balcony. Kassapa asks a simple question. Would that clean, happy man ever voluntarily dive back into the reeking filth of the cesspool? No way. Kassapa argues that to heavenly beings, the human realm is just as foul-smelling and unappealing. They have absolutely zero desire to dive back in. On top of that, Kassapa introduces this mind-bending concept of time relativity. The text states that 100 human years equals just a single day in the heavenly realms. So think about it. A virtuous friend dies, goes to heaven, and thinks, I'll just relax here for 2 or 3 days, enjoy the sights, and then I'll pop back down to earth and warn Payasi. Well, if they wait just 2 or 3 heavenly days to visit, they would arrive to find Payasi long dead. He would have been gone for hundreds of human years. Section 2. Searching for the soul. Since the whole messenger theory didn't pan out, Payasi pivots to physical observation. He throws out an incredibly sharp challenge. If the afterlife is really so great, why don't virtuous believers just skip the wait and kill themselves to get there faster? He argues that if these monks genuinely believe a paradise is waiting for them as a reward for their morality, enduring the hardships of this life makes zero logical sense. They should just punch their ticket early and collect the reward, right? Kassapa rebuts this by showing that forcing a result before its time only leads to total destruction. He tells this really stark, dark story of a foolish pregnant woman whose husband passes away. She is so impatient to know if she's having a boy who would inherit the wealth that she literally cuts open her own belly. By rushing it, she destroys herself, the baby, and the inheritance. It's a heavy analogy, but the lesson is profound. Virtuous people do not rush the harvest. They wait for the fruit of their deeds to ripen naturally, living out their full lifespan to cultivate as much goodness as they possibly can. So then Payasi explains this horrifying experiment he did. He took a living criminal, sealed him inside an airtight pot, and literally boiled him just to see if a soul would visibly escape when they broke the seal. He saw nothing. Kassapa responds to this by pointing out just how invisible our consciousness actually is. He says to Payasi, "Hey, when you're asleep and dreaming of wandering through beautiful forests, do your royal guards see your soul leave your body?" Payasi admits, well, no, they don't. Kassapa hits the nail on the head. If we can't even see the invisible nature of consciousness while a person is alive and dreaming, how on earth could we expect to see it with our physical eyes the moment they die? Section 3, Debunking Materialism. Payasi is still digging his heels in, trying to prove his point using weights and measures. He argues that a dead body weighs more and is stiffer than a living one, which to him proves nothing left the body. But Kassapa beautifully maps this out using a blacksmith's iron. He explains that adding invisible energy actually makes things lighter and more functional. Think about it. A cold iron ball is heavy, rigid, and completely unworkable, exactly like a corpse. But when you pump it full of invisible elements, like heat and wind from the bellows, that iron becomes glowing, light, and workable. It's exactly like a living person filled with vitality and consciousness. Kassapa drives this home with a great micro-story about villagers in a conch shell. Imagine people who have never ever heard a conch shell before. Someone blows it, creates this beautiful music, and then sets the shell down. The villagers run over, pick up the silent shell, beat it with sticks, and shake it, demanding the music come out. Kassapa explains that life is just like that music. It is a combination of the physical body, human effort, and the invisible wind of consciousness. You can't just dissect a physical body and expect to find the music of life sitting in there like a solid object. Section 4. The danger of stubbornness. At this point, the debate shifts away from logic and gets deep into the psychology of belief. Payasi actually confesses to Kassapa that he knows he's been beaten. The logic is flawless. But other kings and his subjects know him as the great skeptic. If he completely changes his mind now, he thinks they'll call him a fool. So he openly admits he's choosing to cling to a flawed belief purely out of anger, pride, and the desire to save face. It is the ultimate ego trap. To try and break through this massive wall of pride, Kassapa tells a story about two travelers. They are on a journey, and they keep finding items of increasing value. On day 1, they stumble upon a large pile of cheap hemp. The next day, they find thread, then fine cloth on day 3, silver on day 4, and finally on the 5th day, they hit the jackpot, a massive pile of pure gold. Now, Kassapa warns Payasi not to be like the foolish merchant in this story. The foolish traveler actually refuses to drop his cheap bundle of hemp for the gold, simply because he's emotionally attached to it. He says, "I've carried it this far, and I tied the knot really well." The wise merchant, however, happily drops the cheap stuff to carry the gold home. Kassapa is looking right at Payasi, urging him to drop his heavy, burdensome pride. He's saying, accept the gold of truth and don't worry about how long you've been carrying around that bundle of skepticism. Section 5. The Consequences of Intention. So Payasi finally does it. He drops his metaphorical bundle of hemp, admits defeat, and sets up this massive charity to distribute his wealth. You'd think the story ends there, with Payasi totally redeemed, right? Well, there is a fascinating catch. The text takes a surprising turn, pointing out that just doing the right thing mechanically isn't enough if your underlying attitude is terrible. Just look at how Payasi's careless charity played out compared to his manager Uttara. Payasi provided all the funds, sure, but he gave away cheap gruel and rough clothes carelessly. He was practically throwing it at people in disgust. But Uttara, who simply managed the charity, distributed those exact same items with deep respect, humility, and personal care. And because of that, the text claims Uttara achieved a significantly higher heavenly state than the prince himself. The huge takeaway the source material leaves us with here is that the quality of our mind, our intentions, massively outweighs the sheer physical mechanics of what we do. The physical act itself is literally only half the equation. It's the intention, the empathy, the respect, the mindset behind the act that truly defines the ethical weight of our actions in this world. This brings us to a final, powerful message, supposedly brought back from the afterlife by a monk named Gavampati. It entirely shifts the focus of the debate. It moves us away from this obsessive need to scientifically prove the mechanics of the next world and grounds us right back in the present. It becomes a profound call to mindfulness, focusing entirely on how ethically and thoughtfully we treat others in our daily lives. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought to chew on regarding your own life. We all have beliefs or habits we fiercely cling to, Mostly because changing our minds feels like admitting defeat. But remember the wise merchant. Never be afraid to drop the hemp when you finally find the gold. Thank you so much for diving into this incredible ancient debate with me today.